Welcome to Practical Business Technology, where we keep you in the know about technology's impact on business. Today's show is sponsored by the Maricopa County Bar Association, and our host is Dave Kinsey, author and owner of Total Networks. Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're talking about business continuity. We have a guest with us, Jason Pryce of Datto. So Jason, I want to thank you so much for being here today with us. And if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little about your role at Datto.
So my name is Jason Pryce. I am the Technical Channel Development Manager at Datto, and I work for the business development team. Essentially what I do is I partner with our partners and look at different ways that we can help spread the word about the need for business continuity, taking a look at the threat landscape out there and helping our partners to develop plans and solutions, for their clients.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you for being here. So backups are obviously important, and businesses in general take reasonable steps to try to avoid disaster. One of the things that we want to talk about is also they really need to plan for the worst. So we're not scrambling when disaster strikes. So that's the idea of having that business continuity plan. And most businesses don't really think even about backups until they need them. Then it becomes really the only system they care about, right? So you got to have it perfect, which is impossible, but that's kind of what you need. It's got to succeed every time, all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're always trying to, IT is monitoring and validating backups and performing test restores, simulating disasters, recovering from them, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why lots of times we're talking to our clients about how quickly can you recover and how much data might you lose in certain disaster scenarios. So the idea of RPO, recovery point objective, and RTO, recovery time objective. So Jason, what are your thoughts about RPO versus RTO?
I think those are the two most important ideas or numbers that you have to come up with. And it's different for each business. So just take a step back. RPO, recovery point objective, that is the amount of data that you can potentially lose if a disaster happens, right? So you come into your office and your computer is literally on fire, let's say, right? The question you're going to have is, well, when was the last time I had a backup? If your last backup was an hour ago, you potentially can lose an hour worth of data. If it was a week ago, potentially you lose 7 days worth of data. If it was 5 minutes ago, potentially you can lose up to 5 minutes. The other idea or that you should really have a good firm grip on is RTO, right, which is recovery time objective, right? And so that is when that disaster happens, you now know that you have a backup from 5 minutes ago, so you're happy with that, but how quickly can you get back up and running, right? What is your threshold for pain? Do you need to be back up within 5 minutes, an hour, right? If I said, hey, we can get you back up tomorrow, would that be business ending? Right.
There's obviously a cost associated with that, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. So all this really kind of ties into the plan of overall business continuity. So like when things go wrong, mm-hmm. What do you do? So do you have any thoughts on how that the overall business continuity plan and how the backups tie into that? Or
so first and foremost, having a plan is going to be very, very important. Right. So it's not only the mechanism of having that backup and having a duplicate copy and having the ability to get that data in a form where you can actually utilize it as quickly as possible. But you also have to come up with a game plan of, right, when this disaster happens, who needs to be contacted, who needs to be reached out, who creates what type of ticket, where are all the documentation that lays out the processes that need to be followed in this situation. All of those together create that plan, right? So backup is just one component of it, but it's worthless to have a backup system if nobody knows how to execute when it's time to execute, right? And so that's going to be very important. The other idea is that you always need to make sure that plan is a working piece of art, right? It's something where you can't just put in your desk and say, hey, I completed this disaster recovery plan, and if anything happens for the next 5 years, I'm good. Because it's always evolving. There's new threats. There's new methods that can make your life easier. I mean, there's so much things that need to be considered. And so it takes me back to a quote that was said by Mike Tyson. And it says that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And so you have a plan. The plan is good, but you have to always keep making sure that you're punching yourself in the mouth, right? And seeing how you're going to react and pivot in that scenario.
Yeah, like I can think of, when we do our disaster recovery planning, we look at the likelihood of something to happen, and then what would the impact to the business be under these various circumstances. Like, one of the things that's becoming less and less important is like losing your building, because we're having more capability of things in the cloud, and we've had to execute on that. There's a time when there was a transformer that blew for our building, and it was really cool to see that our plan worked. We actually had, I think, planned on where to even have our disaster recovery plan where it was available without this building and whatnot. And we just kind of worked on the plan, and it lowered the stress, and it made sure there was really not an impact. One of the nice things we really like about Datto is for anything that we do have where we do need a server that's on premise, inherently it also exists in the cloud. So you're never beholden to just what happens on a particular facility, and so that's a very nice thing to have.
Yeah, but you also make a good point about reviewing it regularly, because you might have different infrastructure, you might have different software applications or different requirements, so it is an ongoing thing.
Exactly, and to add there, when we take a look even 10 or 15 years ago, the type of threats that we would think as being an event that would need a business or a disaster plan. You had, natural disasters, right? We also talked about the fires, the floods, tornadoes. We talked about the fires, and, we also talked about viruses at that point in time. But we take a look at now and the different reasons why you need to have that plan, right? You have different regulations that are coming about, right, which dictate the need to make sure that data is preserved. You have different organizations and different verticals, right, who have to maintain data for a certain amount of time, whether it be on-prem or off-site. You also have, SaaS data, right, that exists now that didn't exist necessarily in the past, right, to make sure that information is backed up, right? So the times have changed. The need for backing up has pivoted and just become more of a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So working at Datto, have you run into any interesting stories about?
Oh, I'm sure he's got some interesting stories. It's Datto, right? Come on. Give us some details.
We had one partner who, for something happened on site, and they had to virtualize in our private data center or in our cloud. And would you believe that the person who spun up the virtualization and got their customers up and running, he left the company, and for about a year and a half, that company was running out of the Datto data center and had no idea.
Oh my goodness!
Right? And that's one of the more interesting stories from a Datto standpoint, right? Where you would think that you would have a different experience running from our cloud versus your own production servers, but it ran so seamless and everything just worked, and they just did not realize that for a long time.
Yeah, no, so you're not supposed to do that.
Not supposed to do that. Not recommended. And and
it's a backup place.
It's a backup place, and so we don't want you to do that. But I always found that to be really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Stories that I've heard. There's always interest in the different types of ransomwares that we're seeing come about. One of the ones that I always think is really intriguing is one called the popcorn time ransomware. With that ransom, essentially, you're infected, your files are encrypted, and you get a message, right? The message says that, hey, you can do one of two things. Number one, you can pay this ransom, and this ransom is $500 or $1,000 or $10,000, and you will get your data back. The second option is that you can send this to 2 of your friends. And if you send it to 2 of your friends and they open it up and they get infected, you get your data back. Right?
So refer a friend to misery. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'm sure I have a couple ex-wives, that I can send to. Maybe.
Oh, yeah, that person's not going to be your friend anymore. Oh gosh.
So,
boy. And I imagine, wow, that's pretty wild. And I imagine when these large-scale disasters happen, like I wonder with everything that went crazy in Texas, if you guys saw like an uptick in more people running off your cloud. I imagine there would have been some of that.
Yeah. So I mean, we have a ton of logic that we can kind of look at different like trends and things of that nature that we're seeing. We also, like as a company, work with a bunch of other top name tech companies in order to help identify and protect from ransomware, right? So if we're seeing certain threats, out there, we'll be able to notify the authorities or notify our partners and their clients. Another interesting story is that through that collaboration, we actually discovered that there was a partner who had a former employee who was on the dark web trying to sell information or access to their MSP. And we were able to get the authorities involved along with 2 other companies that you would consider competitors of ours. But when it comes to security, we don't compete, right? We all need to be sharing the same information. And we were able to get that person arrested, indicted, and I believe that person may be now serving time. We have a ton of different stories, whether it be about the types of ransomware that we're seeing out there, or whether it be about different threats that are happening to our partners that we're able to intercept, or just, stories of people forgetting that they're running in our cloud.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, obviously, one of the big stories that we've had this past year is COVID-19 and the pandemic. Boy, that's a disaster that not a whole lot of people saw coming. How has it affected you, and any thoughts on how it's affected business continuity?
So, obviously my role typically is to be traveling and doing different events, whether it be with our MC partners or industry events, and being able to really spread the word about, Datto and the different, services and offerings that we have. And that has come to the point where now everything is done via a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting. All of our locations are currently, closed until at least July 1st. So, that's been interesting. From, a business case, we actually saw an uptick in a lot of different areas, especially in the need for people to back up and protect their SaaS data. So we have a solution which is able to back up Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. And by doing that, making sure that there is data which resides in a secondary location in the event that, anything happens from, ransomware, or as more people are engaging through teams, working across, different parts of the city or county or country, there's more chance of data being compromised. And so, that has been a huge growth area for us. Surprisingly, most of our MSPs that weren't really vertical specific in terms of only working in one industry have seen incredible amounts of growth that if I were to have thought about it last March, I'd have been like, no, I'm scared for my, partners. But, with more people work from home, more need to secure their home networks, more need to be able to put tools in that give people access to those networks. The need to do site-to-site VPNs and things of that nature has caused a lot of MSPs to find a lot more business that they may not have normally had. And so overall, I think that we were able to accelerate some other game plans in terms of, as more people are going offsite into Azure and such, be able to come up and develop and test different solutions to be able to make sure that we're securing those environments as well. So we will be seeing more information about that coming probably the next couple of months. So
Yeah, I mean that's a good point there about in terms of like backing up the cloud. Some people just think, well, the cloud it just all works, right? And it's all backed up. Well, yeah, from disaster, but not necessarily from data loss. Like there's some interesting ability to either recover or not recover, and how you can do that. So we definitely work with our clients to. It's generally been a good solution to have a cloud to cloud backup, so that people can feel confident in that their data is going to be there.
Exactly.
So you touched a little bit on how business continuity planning has changed over the last 10 years and touched a little bit about how things are changing with COVID. What do you expect to see over the next 5 years?
I think I'm a little unconventional with this thought that I'm about to share with you. I actually think that though more environments are going to the cloud, there's going to be a turning point where we're going to start seeing more servers and infrastructure going back on site again, right? And I don't know whether this is going to be caused by some sort of disruption within these huge cloud infrastructure companies such as Amazon or Microsoft. But I see people wanting to be closer to data again, and so once again, it's unconventional. Not many people are thinking like that. But
I'm kind of not thinking that way. But yeah, I mean that's certainly possible.
Oh yeah. But I think that it's still wise to prepare for both situations. Another I think right now security is a hot topic, and it should be front of mind. I think in terms of like perimeter access and controls and things of that nature are going to be a huge you're going to see a huge movement going in that direction as well. It's already started because it's kind of like an offset of security, but I think that there's a lot of room for growth and expansion there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Any closing thoughts?
Make sure that you have a business plan or disaster recovery plan. Make sure it's accessible. Make sure you're teaching it out to your employees, to anybody who interfaces with your technology stack. Make sure that with your backups, whatever system you're using, preferably a Datto, that you are making sure that those backups are working correctly. And with the Datto, it's an easy process because Dave and Stephanie will get the screenshot verifications and make sure that everything is good and running the way that it should be running. And at the end of the day, make sure that those plans are a living document. Make sure that they're always being updated. Make sure that they're always being tested, and just make sure that there's a level of comfort around them. And I think if you do those items, I think you'll be in a good place.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining us. It's been great having you.